Great. Well, good evening, and thank you all so much for joining us for tonight's program entitled When Objects Talk Back, a look into haunted objects and paranormal research. So tonight we're joined by the paranormal couple, Cody Ray Despians and Satori Hawes. First of all, I apologize if I mispronounced any of your names. That's terrible of me. But we know them all from the Travel Channel's Ghost Nation. They're here to do a deep dive into the phenomena of haunted objects. As the curators of the Paranormal Couples Haunted Museum of Objects, Oddities, and Curiosities, the traveling exhibition, both Satori and Cody have built up quite the collection of creepy oddities and haunted objects. During this presentation, we will explore the origins of haunted artifacts, have the chance to see some of the alleged haunted objects that they have recovered that have been recovered by Cody and Satori during their actual paranormal investigations. And we're going to hear the creepy yet intriguing stories that accompany each item. So everyone watching live on Zoom and those that will watch on demand, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Satori and Cody for joining us here tonight. And paranormal couple, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you so much for having us. This is our second time presenting for the Tewksbury Public Library.
Yes.
So we're very honored and happy to be back, especially in the spooky season, Halloween. So
Spooky season.
This is the best time to talk about this stuff.
Look at that turnout. We have quite a few people here.
All right, give me a second while I share
right.
my screen here. I'm going to share this so you guys can see what's going on.
Whoop.
All righty.
I think we're doing something.
Sharing
All right.
and going to present.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go.
Awesome.
All right, so that's us. Tonight we're going to be doing our presentation When Objects Talk Back, a look into haunted objects and paranormal research with, of course, us. So a little bit about who we are before we dive deep into the haunted object topic.
Yes, so my name is Satori Hawes. I'm sure you may recognize that last name. I am a lifelong investigator, which means that the paranormal was involved in my family since before I was born, and I grew up with it. My dad started TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Society, in 1990 and then about 2004, ghost hunters took off, and the paranormal kind of became normal. It was pushed into the spotlight. So a lot of people felt that they were able to talk about the paranormal now. I never grew up thinking that you couldn't. I was always open to the paranormal field, the paranormal metaphysical world, and I like to take an emotional, social approach to investigating. I'm going to be honest, I can barely work a cell phone. Cody is definitely the techie one of the both of us. I like to go into a home and communicate with people, feel out the environment, and just see what I feel with my senses. I feel senses are very important.
And I have been investigating for about 10 years now. I've been with TAPS for about 6 of those 10 years, and it's really been a very interesting and wild ride. I've investigated all over the country, literally hundreds of investigations, and anywhere and any place you can think of, we probably have done some iteration of it. Schools, ships, haunted hospitals, churches, believe it or not, have called us in to investigate. Those, are definitely always confidential. They don't like us sharing the evidence of those cases for sure. But with TAPS, I focus a lot on the technical side of things. Like Satori mentioned, I love collecting the data of an investigation. I love that black and white data that we can present to a client and say, listen, this is what might be going on and this shouldn't be happening. Here's your proof. You can keep this. A story is just a story, but if you have the paperwork to prove it, that something strange is going on, that makes it a whole different story.
And then he met me, and he's friends with my dad, and there you go.
The rest is history. So how we really got started, how we got interested in the paranormal, I'm the one on the left. I'm not sure if this is flipped on somebody's screen, but I'm the one with the turtleneck on.
Turtleneck sweater.
So my first experience happened in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. That's the house I grew up in. My room was the second level all the way to the right. And when I was the age of that picture, I had my first paranormal experience that really opened my eyes to this whole entire field. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, going into my parents' bedroom, saying I didn't feel well, and they invited me to spend the night And I remember tossing and turning for about 15 minutes. And finally, I opened my eyes to a bunch of men that were circling the bed. They were gliding around the bed, going through the wall on the left side of the headboard, going through the wall on the right side of the headboard, and just kept going around in a circle. It petrified the heck out of me. I remember seeing the television through one of their heads, and I knew that was not something normal. I remember trying to wake my mom up. I remember trying to wake my dad up. They both wouldn't wake up, which scared me even more because, those are the people that are supposed to protect you when you're that age, and they weren't waking up. So I remember pulling the covers over my head and just falling asleep. I never experienced anything like that again in that house. But on the first level lived my Catholic grandparents. And, the whole paranormal topic was a little touchy when it came to, ghosts being around the house. But there was some other strange activity that was happening that everybody was experiencing, including them. They were hearing footsteps walking around on the second floor and nobody was there. They were hearing what sounded like ghost dogs, believe it or not, barking upstairs. We didn't own a dog at the time. We would run upstairs thinking somebody had broken in, an animal had gotten in, and nobody was up there. And that made them scratch their heads a bit and say, well, wait a minute, maybe there is something going on. So this whole experience really blew the door open for me to get interested in this field. And I've been very lucky to live in this part of the United States because this is like the central hub. And I think that's because of Satori's dad.
So I started in Warwick, Rhode Island, where TAPS actually began. There's a photo of me and my pops, my old man right there. I used to get a lot of experiences at a very young age, and we believe it may be because I never thought that it wasn't real. I was always taught it was real and should be respected, the paranormal. So I had many experiences. I was very open. One experience, I would always claim to see butterflies. I would claim to my parents, I see butterflies flying around my room. They'll talk to me. They don't leave me alone. After a while, my family was like, okay, maybe it's not an overactive imagination, because I started describing butterflies as, angelic figures and things like that. So I would associate them with butterflies. Another case that I used to experience in this home in Warwick is I used to cry about a little boy in the drain. And I would always tell my parents, he's stuck in the drain, he's crying, he's looking for his mommy. We need to help him. He's calling to me. And I would say this over and over again from the drain in the bathtub, and to the point where I never wanted to take a bath anymore in that house. So those are just some experiences for me. I always grew up with so many experiences.
Yes, absolutely. And that's very interesting because growing up in a home that is totally open to this stuff is extremely rare. And I believe that kind of opens your senses a bit more as kids grow older. So identifying the haunting. So when we get called into a case and investigate the claims that are going on, each haunting has to kind of fall under a category. It's not always an object attachment or an object that is the catalyst of a haunting, which is, kind of our specialty. There definitely is some other more common topics that we usually run into. And residual and intelligent hauntings are probably two of the most common. Residual is not really a spirit that you can have a conversation with. It's just an energy, the essence of a person that is kind of imprinted on the property, the building materials of your home. So the theory is a stone tape theory, which we'll get into a few slides ahead here. But think of a action that you do every single day, repetitive. Maybe you wake up every single morning, you go down the stairs, have a cup of coffee, and then you go to work. And you do that same routine over and over and over again for God knows how many years, 30 years, let's say. It's theorized that that repetitive action is somehow ingrained in the building materials of a home. And especially here in New England, we have a lot of minerals that are said to contain energy. So that might be why we have a heightened amount of paranormal activity in this area, along with the old buildings and history and things like that. And then we get to intelligent hauntings.
Well, a famous case of residual hauntings is actually Gettysburg.
Yes,
a lot of people think of Gettysburg, and it's very famous for the residual hauntings. A lot of people see soldiers in uniform getting ready to go off to battle, not acknowledging anybody else there. So that is a famous case of a residual haunting. Intelligent, I like to call the holy grail of paranormal investigating, everybody. You go into a location, you have a recorder in your hand, and you say, hello, what is your name? And you get a response back saying, hello, my name is Susie. That is a intelligent haunting. They are there. They somehow cognitively understand us and our environment. We don't know how it really works, but they're there and they're actively trying to communicate with us. So that is an intelligent.
And then you get to inhuman. Now, right away, when people hear the inhuman topic, they think of negative, bad, demons, demonic. That does fall under the inhuman category, but it's extremely rare. Other topics that fall under this category is the angelic realm. Angels fall under the inhuman category because they were said to never walk this earth.
Deities.
Yes, deities. And
Elementals.
over in Ireland, their beliefs strongly rely on the fairies. So this would fall under that inhuman category as well.
And object attachment, that is kind of what we're covering tonight. We believe there are multiple categories within this subject. For example, object attachment and object possession. Object attachment is something you love so much in life. So for example, take this ring I have on my hand. If I loved it so much in life and I wanted to make sure it was being taken care of after life, I may stick around and just make sure the new owner's taking good care of it. Activity may happen around this object, not necessarily to this object specifically. Object possession is somebody decided that they have nowhere else to go or that they want to go, and they've attached themselves to an object to the point where they're using it as a physical conduit to interact with our environment. So you'll see this item moving, interacting as if that person is still alive.
The origin of haunted objects. So this dates back a lot further than most people think. We're definitely not the first people to be interested in haunted objects.
Or the last.
Or the last. There have been many greats that we, totally 100% respect. But it even dates further back than them. So if we go back to around 1100 BC, we have the creation of puppets, effigies, voodoo dolls, that type of phenomena. Now, if you look on the screen, there's a wax figure. Now, this is what was being made back in those times. So this is the time that Ramses III was ruling over the New Kingdom. And unfortunately for him, a lot of the people he was ruling over did not like him at all. They hated him. So they would make these little wax figures, or they would make them out of clay or wood. Usually they were made out of wax in that time period. And they would make them to represent the pharaoh himself. They would make them to represent King Ramses. So because they hated him, they would then take that doll and destroy it. They would cut it up, they would throw it in the fire, feed it to animals. They wanted to do everything they could to make sure that their king died ultimately. And they truly believed that doing this, it would ultimately, whatever they did to that doll would happen to him.
Now, another time we start to see stuff like this appear is around 200 BC in Greece. We start to see sympathetic magic. What that is kind of the same thing. They would take items that belong to loved ones, herbs, things like that, and would mix them together to make effigies, dolls, or some sort of satchel or bag. And for example, they were used for both negative and positive things. If somebody in the town wanted you to fall in love with them so bad, they would go to somebody that practiced sympathetic magic and they would beg for them to make something like this. And if they took care of it or did specific things to it in hopes that you would hopefully fall in love with them, they believed it would work. On the opposing side, they would make things, for example, war. If you were about to go to war against somebody else, another country or town, people that practice sympathetic magic will make either one large one or many, many small ones to represent the opposing side and would destroy them in hopes that you would win that future war. Then we get to about 16th century. This is Haitian voodoo. This is kind of the voodoo we start to see today, the famous practices that don't really get a good rap.
They don't. They actually have a really bad reputation. Now, one of the things that we love to do is learn about different cultures and how they interact with the paranormal. And voodoo was definitely a topic that we definitely wanted to learn about. So I took a few trips down to New Orleans and interviewed a few people. And one of the people I did interview was a voodoo priestess. And he, definitely filled me in on, him and his wife definitely filled me in on how voodoo is misrepresented. So you would go to one of these practitioners in today's world, and if you had a sick family member, let's say, You would go in maybe with one of their shirts or a piece of their shirt, a piece of their hair, something that meant something to them that represents them individually, and give it to the practitioner. And they would make a doll, a good health doll. They're not all bad dolls. They would make a good health doll and include whatever you brought to them. So if you brought a piece of shirt, they would put that inside of the doll along with some herbs and spices that he or she believed would help the situation. And then they would do some ceremonies over that doll in the hopes that they would ultimately cure or prolong your loved one's life. And this practice is still practiced today. This is the main type of voodoo that's done in New Orleans right now. With every good, there is a negative side to it, and that is still practiced. But it's more of like an underground thing. It's very rare to find a practitioner that will do a curse or something, a true curse on somebody if you go down there, because it's just not something that they want to be known for. It, of course, does happen, and we do feature some authentic voodoo dolls in our museum if you ever get a chance to visit.
Then we get to about 20th century haunted possessed objects. People start to come out and say, well, maybe it's not just a location that's holding a haunting. We should really be researching these items and such too. The spiritual movement has come and kind of gone and pushed the paranormal into the eyes of people, make it not such a touchy subject to talk about. Two famous paranormal investigators and haunted collectors, Ed and Lorraine Warren, and so many others, start to come out of the woodwork and just kind of say, hey, let's actually start talking about this. We're not crazy. Something's definitely going on. We have to start talking about this. And that's where investigators really started to come out.
That's right. And just a quick note, we are broadcasting live from the base museum. So the museum is currently a traveling exhibit. So if you do hear some noises and knocks and maybe a voice here and there, it is a very common occurrence that happens down here.
And we'll let you know because sometimes we do have dogs upstairs too.
We
So
do.
you may hear some noises
We
that
do.
aren't. All right. So identifying the object.
So when we enter a home and complete our investigation, or we get a call from a client who already thinks that they have an object that's in question, we want to ask the questions. We want to say, okay, are you sure that this is the object that's causing the haunting? What are all of the new items that you've brought into the house? What is everything? Make a list of it all. Even the things that you might not think is causing the problem, give us a list and maybe we'll take a good look over it.
So yes, we ask if anything is happening in your home, look for these things. Look for antiques, family heirlooms, something that meant a lot to somebody. A lot of the objects we have are antiques and sadly family heirlooms. The last thing we want to do is take these objects from you. We have so many steps that we do before seeing if you're actually comfortable with letting this object out of your life. A lot of antique stores, people go to antique stores and feel drawn to these items and they take them home. Who knows how many hands they passed through before they got to you. So look for things like this. Look for things like that.
And of course, we have objects that have been used in some negative practices as well. Objects that have been used in the occult. We have gotten called in as consultants and as investigators on some pretty dark cases. And we do have some of those objects featured in the museum. And that's more of a kind of an experimental purpose to see if this type of object can still hold residual energy from the events that it was used in.
We always give warnings before we show people those objects.
We do.
So some famous haunted objects.
Now, probably two of the most famous. One of them, everybody probably definitely has heard of, is Annabelle the doll, and then we have Robert the doll, who is currently down in Florida. So we'll dive a little deep into some of the more famous ones, and then dive even a little deeper into some of the objects that we have featured here in the museum.
We'll tell you the real stories. As you can see, Annabelle looks a lot different in real life than what Hollywood has made her out to be, and that's for the fear factor of things. So Annabelle was given to a nursing student in 1970. This is the story that Ed Warren tells or told. And she loved this doll instantly. She felt so attached to this Raggedy Ann doll, tried giving it a good home, but things started happening immediately. For example, they would hear noises, giggling, and voices. They would hear knocking and banging in the middle of the night. Notes would appear saying, "Hello, help me, come play with me," stuff of that nature. And it really started to freak the nursing student and her friends out. So they brought in a medium who claimed that the doll was actually inhabited by a little girl named Annabelle, nothing to really worry about, and that she was just kind of looking for a home. So this made the nursing student really say, okay, I need to give this little girl a home. I need to invite her into my life. And she didn't really know what she was getting herself into. For example, she had given the doll its own kind of place to stay and tried to interact with the spirit of this little girl. One gentleman, as the story goes, didn't believe in Annabelle at all. And he said, I don't believe in this. She's not actually haunted. This is all just a bunch of lies. I don't buy it. He fell asleep, and the story goes that he had a dream that Annabelle was crawling up his leg to attack him. And as he awoke, he saw Annabelle sitting across the room facing his direction with scratch marks actually on his leg. So this warranted the Warrens to be called in.
Now, when Ed and Lorraine came into the case, they, of course, did their best to help the family out. And they believe that the most positive ending result that they could make was to only happen if they removed the doll. And by doing that, they took the doll back home to their museum in Monroe, Connecticut. And on the way, they actually had some pretty scary occurrences happen. Ed used to always tell the stories on how he was driving the car home, and he believed that Annabelle took control of the vehicle. He started turning the wheel. He believed that she started turning the wheel and making the car actually go off the road. Now, once Annabelle was in the museum, there was this one story that Ed used to always tell. And thankfully, we've become great friends. Are you hearing that with the museum?
Yeah.
So definitely a common occurrence to hear noises like that. Once Annabelle was in the museum, Ed used to always tell the story. And thankfully, we've become great friends with Ed and Lorraine's family and heard a bunch of these stories from firsthand accounts. And so Ed claimed that one day a young man and his girlfriend came into the museum. Now, Annabelle is in this great glass case now in the museum. It's unfortunately closed to the public, but she's still sitting in this case in Monroe, Connecticut. But when this couple came to visit, Annabelle wasn't sitting in a case yet. She was just sitting on a table. And you could tell by Ed's words, you could tell that the boyfriend was dragged there by his girlfriend. He wasn't a fan of the paranormal at all. And the girlfriend was, very into the occult and paranormal. And when Ed told the story of Annabelle, the boyfriend didn't believe any of it. Very similar to the gentleman who had the nightmare. So he walked over to Annabelle, started poking at her, picked her up and said, if there's truly a demon attached to this doll, let it come out of her and attack me now. And this is definitely something you should not do. Why take your chances? Even if you don't believe in this stuff, I still don't recommend doing that. So Ed was furious. He kicked the couple out and they went home on their motorcycle. The next morning, he's reading the paper and notices that there's this motorcycle crash and somebody died. And he's wondering, he goes, maybe there's a connection. Maybe this was the couple that visited the museum because it was in the area. So a few months down the line, he receives a phone call out of the blue. And it's this same girl that visited the museum with her boyfriend. And she states that it indeed was them that got in the motorcycle crash that evening. And her boyfriend died. She luckily survived very serious injuries. And she claims that the last image she saw before the motorcycle crash was Annabelle's face inches away from hers. And then she blacked out and woke up in a hospital. And she believes that Annabelle was the cause of the motorcycle crash.
Sorry if we're stuttering today. We're just keeping our ears out because things are happening all over the place. All right. Ready for Robert the Doll?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, Robert the Doll. Now, this is one of my favorite haunted object cases. So Robert Eugene was given this doll as a gift in the early 1900s. Soon after he had gotten this doll, he started going by Gene because he claimed that Robert the Doll wanted his name Robert, so he had to change his. So Gene, at a very young age, started blaming everything on Robert. Something would break in the house, Robert did it. He lied or did something wrong, Robert told him to do it. So just a kid kind of using this item as an imaginary friend to blame things on. At least that's what the family thought. Maybe it was just an overactive imagination, right? well, wrong. They had worried so much about some of the things that were happening. Those are dogs. Don't
Living
worry about
dogs.
that. They were so worried about the way he was acting that they decided to take Robert, put him in a wooden box, and place him in the attic. And they all moved away for a short period of time to France, and he started growing out of it.
Now, what happened is Jean would grow up and meet a woman in France. They would get married and move back to their childhood home. And unfortunately for Jean, he would make his way up to the attic where Robert was nailed shut in the box. He would open the box, and unfortunately for him and his new wife, the events would unfold right from the beginning again.
Now, it's one thing for a young boy to start blaming everything on a doll or interacting with a doll like that, but for a grown man to do it, a lot of questions were being asked. Jean would start giving Robert his own room in the home. Him and his wife were not allowed to eat until Robert had gotten his share of dinner, things like that. And the wife was becoming very concerned. At one point, she claimed to have gone downstairs and seen Jean in the middle of the living room talking to Robert in the dark, almost as if he was having a one-sided conversation with a friend that only she could hear his side of. This all just kept going on until about 1974, when Jean couldn't be found, and his wife had gone into the attic and found Jean dead with Robert on top of him. What's strange about this case is that it seemed that Robert had both of his hands on the side of Jean's neck, almost as if he had strangled him to death. Now Robert's actually being held at a museum in the Keys, right?
He is, and thousands of people visit him every single year. And if you get the chance to visit Robert the doll, you'll notice that around Robert, they have on the walls thousands of letters from people that have visited Robert, and then they've written him a letter apologizing to him because they claim after they visited him that bad, luck would happen in their lives and things started to go wrong, and they blamed everything that was happening to them on their visit with Robert the doll. Some people took pictures of him, and it said that you're supposed to ask permission before you take his picture. And the people that didn't ask permission are very superstitious that they are now cursed for the rest of their life if they don't write a letter back to him. We've never investigated Robert the doll, so we're not really sure of the validity of the phenomena happening around him. But there's definitely something that is going on there. So they also sell this little stuffed plush Robert the doll in their gift shop. And people do purchase these, and when they take them home, they claim that they also have bad luck and misfortune. So it's theorized that could it be possible that much like a voodoo doll, because this little stuffed animal Robert the doll is made to represent the real Robert the doll, could it hold some sort of energy? Could there be some sort of link between the two? We're not sure, but people claim that there is. And we've gotten 1 or 2 phone calls from people that have purchased this this stuffed animal Robert, and thankfully we've been able to handle the case over the phone.
I was gonna say, hopefully we don't just start building up little Robert the doll stuffed animals in the museum.
Yes, one of those hasn't showed up in the mail yet.
So welcome to the museum. We're only going to be showing you a small part of it today, but we have hundreds of items, over 300 and growing every day. From all over the United States.
We do. We have a bunch of objects, and it's almost like the places we've investigated. We've investigated a lot of different places, and we have a lot of different objects from around the world. Many different things that you probably wouldn't expect. We're going to actually show some of those today, toys and things like that. We also have some pretty dark items too.
Yes, so 90% of the museum, the objects that we can prove to have their claims being proven and actually be haunted seem to be from people that just loved them very much. It's just people kind of checking in or trying to physically interact with these items they loved in life. But we do have some famous cult items and serial killer items, situations from mass death, and we don't really want these items. The only reason we have them is because the connections that are kind of made in this field, and a lot of people feel that these objects hold intense energy, so it is an energy study.
And if you have seen this presentation before, we always try to change it up every single time we do this presentation, because we literally have hundreds of objects to choose from. So everything in this presentation is going to be new tonight. So hopefully you'll enjoy some of the objects that we picked out.
Except for our most famous.
Except for the big finale there. So can a building be a haunted object? Now, this is a good question. So, we get called in on hundreds of cases of paranormal phenomena happening in homes. Now, I believe that is a different topic altogether, unless you're dealing with something residual. So I mentioned the stone tape theory, where, an essence or energy can be imprinted on the making up of a house. Bonus points if anybody knows where that house is and what it is, and what its claim to fame is. But could it be possible that the energy that's imprinted on the property can remain with the property if you take a piece of it home? Now, we've gotten, reports and of people taking things home from places that, they've illegally broken into, and things like that, things that they're not proud of. We've dealt with cases where, we're trying to figure out what's going on in the house. There's activity, and there seems to be no cause. And finally, after asking a bunch of questions, we get the client to say, this was a true story, by the way. I broke into one of the abandoned hospitals in the area, and I took some stuff home. And we just look at each other like, okay, that's probably an important thing you should have told us. And that's when all the activity started up. So if you end up going to a place, be very cautious when you're bringing things home. Definitely don't ever break into a place that is condemned and closed down, a place that you're not supposed to be. Everywhere you go, if you're into this field, make sure you ask permission and talk to the right people. If they don't let you in, they don't let you in. It's probably because they don't want you to find ghosts. It's probably a danger issue. There's probably holes in the floor and everything else.
And let me tell you, the spirits will be just as angry if you break in and steal their stuff.
They will, for sure. So we have a piece of a famous location that goes right alongside of this image here. So this that image was the real Conjuring house. If anybody's seen the movie The Conjuring, that is the real house in Harrisville, Rhode Island, that the movie was based off of, the original movie. And we happen to be great friends with the current owners
We
of the
practically
Conjuring house.
live there.
Yes, we were friends with them before they purchased the house, and we've been there literally dozens of times.
Yes.
And this nail is from a documentary filmmaker named Kendall Welton. And if you've seen the movie The Sleepless Unrest, this nail is featured in the end of that.
Yes, so Kendall and Vera had done a documentary with some other friends of ours in the home where they kind of stayed there for a couple weeks, and they had some good activity happen. They had brought home these objects. For example, they had brought home this old nail, original hand-forged nail, and some stuff started happening. They were a little worried, maybe it's all in their head, but their children were experiencing things too. They were all experiencing nightmares, unexplained voices that were making the children hysterical. They were seeing shadows, and they all just felt very uneasy and sick around this item. So they wanted to kind of give this to us to study it. They've been doing very well after giving this object to us, and we've gotten some strange readings off this object, some strange happenings around this object. We've put it in a quarantine period, and we've had shadows move around and the door actually to the quarantined room start trying to open and things like that. So why this may be happening? Residual energy, possibly intelligent energy of the house. They're wondering why the piece of the house is gone. But it's just a really intense feeling around this object.
It is. And, in my personal opinion, I definitely think it's a majority of residual energy. I don't think any of the spirits that are at that house are somehow attached to this object and left the house. I think they, it's just, a piece of them that kind of just lingers on, if that makes sense. And there's definitely have been some strange occurrences that have happened around this object. Now, if you do visit the Conjuring house, it is open to the public. Don't go stealing any nails or wood that you find laying around. This nail was given to the documentary filmmakers by the owner, and totally legal and everything else. And if you do take something, you might have a visitor that comes and follows you once in a while.
I think the entire point of this conversation is Cody telling you, please don't steal things.
Yes, we've heard way too many stories.
So the dancing man, this is an object that is not it's not too recent. We had gotten this mask, we believe, from South America, from a gentleman in New England. who found this in a junk box at an antique store. He just kind of saw it and thought maybe this is a really interesting conversation piece to bring home and put in his office. But as soon as he had brought this item home, some strange things began happening. I know it is a little strange looking. The back is very worn. It's been used for possibly multiple ceremonies and things like that. But as soon as he brought this object home and put it in his office, strange things happened. For example, the sounds of stomping and shuffling, but he always claimed that it was after 5 p.m. Every time we asked him this question over and over again, just to see if maybe there's a consistency there to his claims. I wanted to make sure he was being honest. He always said it was after 5 p.m. Which made us think maybe it was a residual thing. After 5 p.m., this thing kept happening. Mask movement, for example, he also claimed that the mask that was hanging on the wall at the time would start swaying side to side, almost as if it was being used and a head was tilting the mask side to side. Another claim was a dancing man. This was the final straw for him, and that's why he had contacted us. He had gone into his office one evening and noticed a man sitting in what appeared to be a skirt, and he also said some strange makeup which seemed to be ceremonial, dancing around and making these weird singing noises before disappearing in the blink of an eye. He didn't really know what to do with this. He was very startled. He wasn't a big fan of the paranormal, and that's why he had contacted us right away. He had heard of us from social media, and I guess the exact thing that happened was he was like, I need to get rid of this. There's a man dancing in my office. And it was the most random comment ever, but we believed him right away after hearing his claims. So we had put him in quarantine.
We have. Now, every object that comes into our museum goes into this period that we call quarantine period. So basically, we put the object in a room by itself with some of our equipment around it, maybe a camera, and we just observe it for a few weeks to see if it's living up to the claims that the client has given to us. Usually during this period, not much happens with a lot of the objects. We find that there's this acclimation period that happens when you move an object from one location to another. Sometimes it can be a few days, sometimes a few weeks, a few months, and even a few years sometimes. We had an object that it took about 1.5 years before it started doing anything. Some objects, they never do anything. So it's all depends on the situation. Every object is different. But with this mask in particular, while it was in the quarantine period, very rare for something to happen, we were in the museum one day, and all of a sudden we hear this singing. We can't make out any of the words. It's not like a song that we've heard on the radio before. It's just this singing noise that we couldn't figure out where it was coming from. We kind of followed it, and it was coming out of the quarantine room.
What's funny is earlier today, while we were preparing for this presentation, we were here in the museum with this mask, and I had said something to Cody about the mask. And after a couple minutes, I heard him from across the room, and I went, "What are you singing? That is the strangest song I have ever heard." And he said, "That's really strange because I'm holding the mask in my hands right now, and you just heard singing." So it seems that this object has proven its claim multiple times. We haven't seen a man dancing yet, but we're kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah, I was holding the mask, and I didn't hear anything. So we'll have to review our surveillance cameras to see if anything was captured.
All right, this is you.
The fire truck. All right, so this is a kind of a sad story. It's probably one of the newest items we've gotten into the museum, probably, maybe a few months ago. It comes from Norristown, Pennsylvania. And the story behind this truck is a mother and her young son were at a charity yard sale for a local church. And they were walking through the stuff that was for sale. And the young son, I believe he was around 7, I believe, he sees this fire truck, and he has this pull. He wants the fire truck so bad. And the mother pays the few dollars, I think it was $4 for this fire truck, and gives it to her son. And this becomes his go-to toy. This is the thing that I'm hearing the stuff.
Yeah, the lights flickered too.
Yeah. So this was the toy that he played with every single day. And some strange things started to occur. The mother started noticing some weird and unusual activity happening with the boy. She noticed that he was starting to have one-way conversations, what looked like he was talking to thin air, and maybe it was an imaginary friend, she thought, but it turned a little darker. Her son started coming up to her crying. It was really affecting his emotional health. He was saying that there's a boy here and he's really sick. And this used to be the toy that he would play with. And the mother kind of was like, okay, that's a little strange. But what really was the final straw of her believing this story was her child started to say words and terms, hospital terms, that he shouldn't know. He wasn't taught these terms, and it was just something that you know, a 7-year-old should ever hear at that age. So this really prompted a call to us to investigate what was going on. And this was, you know, during the pandemic that we did this case. So we had to do it virtually over a Zoom call, very similar to this. And we had a chance to interview the young child. And we asked him, you know, what did this boy look like? And he kept saying that the boy was wearing a white and blue dress. It had like blue polka dots on it. And this kind of threw up some red flags in our head that, wait a minute, a dress, the boy's wearing a dress. With him saying that the boy was sick, this sounds like a hospital gown, you know, a hospital Johnny. And, you know, the other weird thing was they were hearing wheels rolling around the house. And we theorized maybe that's an IV pole or something.
But we don't want to assume anything until we have the facts.
We do. So the first thing that we wanted to do is, all right, contact the church where you bought the fire truck from and see where or if they know where they got the toys from that they were selling, because most of the stuff was donated. So gave a call, and the person that answered the phone said she wasn't exactly sure where the fire truck came from, but she claimed that a lot of the toys that were for sale were donated from one of the local children's hospitals. She wasn't sure if the fire truck was donated. I theorized that it was. With the situation of the case, it sounds like it was, but we can't 100% say that it was or wasn't.
Because there were homes and other churches and things like that where items were donated to as well.
So by the end of the call, the child didn't really want to play with the fire truck anymore. He you know, truly believed that it wasn't his, and the mother was very concerned for his emotional health. He, you know, wasn't communicating with his friends that well anymore. So the truck was donated to the museum.
Yes, and nothing has really happened thus far with the item. We do think maybe a child needs to play with this item in order to make something happen, because it's only happened when the young boy played with this item. But we are still waiting.
We are. And it's okay if nothing happens too, you know?
It is okay. So the Bridgewater Triangle statue. So we had to take this one out of the case today. So this item was given to us by a family in the Bridgewater Triangle of Massachusetts. More specifically, the Freetown State Forest area. They had a home that the back of their property led into the forest. And they had a very nice ATV trail. Four-wheelers, I think that's what they're called. And we had gotten a call one day because they were very upset. They had found this item sitting on top of a rock in the back of the woods of their home, kind of about 100 feet into the forest. They didn't really know what it was. They were kind of concerned because they saw the bones and the symbols all over it. And being a very religious family, the first thing we had heard over the phone after contacting them was, we think it has something to do with Satanism and the devil. So I was a little skeptical because, well, I wasn't fully skeptical because the forest is known for many different cults practicing their beliefs, but it did seem very strange that they said it very straight like that. It has to be the devil. So we had gone to their home. They had shown us the statue because they brought it inside, and that's where a lot of things started going wrong for them. Nightmares, bad luck. They needed to get rid of it right away. After looking at the statue, I noticed the symbols and thought, this is definitely not anything that has to do with Satanism. There's something else going on here because those are runes. So looking at this item and the bones and how they were crossed, I was like, this has to be something, you know, witchcraft or paganism, something like that. So we had taken this item off their hands and they instantly felt relieved. They claimed that as soon as we brought the statue out of their house, they all felt calm. It was like the space opened up. They stopped having these nightmares and things like that. So we had brought this item home and we had put it in a quarantine period. Strange energy started immediately. Strange readings. People began feeling sick if they entered the quarantine room. I had asked some friends of ours, because they were very knowledgeable about the field and different religions, if they knew what this was. And they said, you know, these runes are very consistent with Baltic witchcraft. And that was very strange to me. Why is there Baltic witchcraft being practiced in the forest? But it made sense because these symbols, if you look at them in that way, mean karma, war, bad luck being sent your way, curses, and an upside down of the symbol of Jumas on the bottom, which also just kind of means really bad things are being sent your way. They're sending bad spirits to you. So we're not really sure why. Maybe this was being sent to curse the family or the land that was kind of taken from them. I know that this used to be reserves and different places of practice. So that's kind of our best theory on it. The reason why this item may be haunted is unknown. A lot of intention was put into this item, but it has definitely proven its claim, would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah, these objects are really difficult to figure out because there's really no backstory that we know of. So it can be a really touchy situation.
All right,
The ghost ship. All right, so this one's an interesting case. So it hails from Hartford, Connecticut. And so what happened here was this was a really nice family that we got to meet. And they had just lost their father, or the wife's husband. And his entire life, his hobby was building ships. And what happened was this was the last ship that that he was working on before he passed away. And what they noticed was that once he passed away, his tools around the ship started moving on their own.
I believe it was actually the grandfather, if we look back into the file on that, her father. But we will have to look back on that. I'm not 100% sure. But yes, a lot of activity started happening. It was almost as if the ship was still being built after his death.
So the other things that started happening was they were hearing footsteps and very common paranormal activity. When we went and investigated, we were getting abnormal electromagnetic readings, which were very unusual for that area and for the house. It was a brand new house, so there shouldn't have been no electrical issues happening. So, you know, they were very comforted to know that their loved one was still around. They truly believed it was him, but at the same time, they were a little freaked out. You know, they definitely weren't really into the paranormal per se, and they believed whether if the ship was there or not there, that, you know, he would still be watching over them. So they decided to donate the ship to the museum, and it's been here ever since. And once in a while, you'll see like a sail, one of the sails move, you know, little things like that. We definitely believe that there definitely is some really nice energy attached to the ship. And you know, the family's very happy. They believe that the grandfather or husband is still around and visiting with them.
It's always so hard with 300 case files. All right, so Death Angel. So Death Angel is a tree topper angel that was given to us by a family in Massachusetts. They had gotten this angel from a secondhand store. They didn't really think they were going to be bringing home a haunted object for Christmas. They had brought this item home and sat it on top of the tree, and they loved it. It was a husband and wife and a couple of children. They go to bed that night. Everything seems perfectly fine until they awake to the smell of smoke. The husband and wife run downstairs to see the Christmas tree is actually up in flames. They were really weirded out because none of the alarms went off, the smoke detectors or anything like that. They quickly put out the fire. Thankfully, it wasn't too bad. They thought maybe it was an electrical problem, but the husband was an electrician. He looked into it and couldn't really find a reason for the fire. He wasn't fond of the paranormal, so we thought maybe it was a fluke. The wife was very interested in the paranormal, and she looked at this item as maybe it's a good luck angel because she survived, even though she's made of cardboard and porcelain. She's very old, so maybe she survived because she's good luck and she's protecting us. So they go get another tree. It's not even yet Christmas. And they bring this tree into the home. They believe in real Christmas trees, put her on top of the tree and go to bed. They awake to the smell of smoke again. This time the Christmas tree is completely engulfed in flames, starting to catch the curtains. Thankfully, they were able to catch it again this time due to the smell. And the wife was still a little optimistic about it. She was weirded out, but tried staying optimistic. The husband didn't want anything to do with this item anymore. So he had set her in a box, and they kind of waited until next year. 2020 rolls around. It wasn't a very good year for any of us, but especially for this family. They found her, put her back on top of the tree, kind of forgot about what happened, and awoke to this time the smell of smoke. They go downstairs, the tree is engulfed so bad that the house started to catch. There's actually still damage in the home. They were very scared with this item. They truly believed it was a bad luck angel, a death angel, as they called it, and had given it to us. So we put it in the museum. Not much had happened while it was in quarantine. We had brought it into the museum perfectly fine, nothing happening. It had dirt on it, so we cleaned it off. And we did an interview and said, she hasn't proven her claim yet. And I'm not sure if this spirit took it as a, you want to see me prove my claim, but we go down to the museum again after a couple days and see that she is completely covered in soot all over her wings and the cardboard. The soot is in the case. We saw a soot handprint on the wall, if you want to cover that slide.
So this was a really scary and creepy occurrence, at least for me. We were doing a live stream and just happened to look up on the wall, and we see this little child's handprint. Now, of course, the museum is closed off to the public, the home-based museum. We have an outbuilding that most of the stuff is contained in, and we do a lot of our live streams from this area. And we're the only ones that come down here. And we're here pretty much every single day, unless we're traveling on the road. So there's no way that this should have ended up on the wall. It kind of looked like a child jumped up, put the handprint on the wall, and the fingers dragged down. Definitely was a creepy occurrence. And link that up with what happened, finding the ash or soot material on the angel. It definitely looked like the same material. So I think it went hand in hand, no pun intended. I think it went hand in hand, and it was the same material and whatever spirit is attached to this angel.
She's done it actually more recently too. Again, we had to test the substance, but it seems to be soot. So make it stop.
Make it stop.
All right, so this doll is our #1 most haunted object. And as you can see, she's sitting on a shelf in that video. The reason for that being is because she gets out of every case we try to put her in. So this is Liza. She was given to us by a man in Franklin, Massachusetts, after Cody had received a call and after a podcast. And the first thing that this man said was, make it stop, make it stop. We were trying to calm him down and wondering what was going on. After we could calm him down a little bit, he said, there's this doll, Liza. She's speaking to me in my head, telling me to do bad things to myself and other people. Instant red flag, because that's a safety concern for a lot of people at that case, in that point. So we had to calm him down more and just kind of get a psych eval on him. We had a psychologist friend contact him and hopefully kind of give us her opinion on him. She said he seemed to check out. It was just he was going through a lot of stress at this moment. She couldn't figure out what was going on. So we went, okay, well, we want to ask you a couple of questions. And we did. We said, why didn't you throw it out? We never promote the destruction of objects, but why didn't you throw it out or destroy it? He said, I tried. She just keeps coming back. What he meant by that was he had thrown the doll in the dumpster, and the garbage man had found this item, taken her out of the dumpster, and placed her back on the porch for him to find it another time. It seemed like he couldn't really get rid of this doll. She kept speaking to him and trying to curse his life, his job, his family, his love life was all falling apart. So he needed to get rid of it, and we agreed to take it off his hands. We met him in a public location and taken her. And ever since then, she has definitely proven her claims on multiple occasions. We had a doll section she was in, and all the heads of the dolls turned 180 degrees backwards, facing away from her on multiple occasions. We've heard voices that sound like some sort of thick Irish or English accent from her, and she moves. We truly believe that she may be an object possession and not just an attachment.
Yeah, we've definitely had many strange occurrences that have happened in the museum revolving around this doll.
Too many to cover.
Now, yeah, why she would be haunted?
Mm-hmm.
We tried getting information from the gentleman on where he had gotten the doll from, and we tried many times, and he wouldn't tell us any information. And that kind of makes us believe that maybe he dabbled in the occult, or maybe the spirit that's possesses this object just really doesn't like him, and maybe he got it from a place that he wasn't supposed to get it from. We're not really sure, but all we know is that there's something definitely attached to this doll. Now we're going to show you a piece of video, and this was recorded in 2018. It hasn't been altered in any way. The only thing is we zoom in on the second half of the video to show you a closer image of Liza, and absolutely gives me chills every time I watch it. We tried for hours trying to, disprove and figure out some normal explanation on how she could have done what she did, but we couldn't. So make sure you watch her. She's
On the left side
right
by
over
the
here,
books.
and I'm going to hit play.
This isn't sped up at all, actually.
Yeah, keep a eye on her face and her arms. Some people say they see her face move as well.
So you're going to see her arm moves to the side, starts pushing her up in the air to adjust her position, and she sits back down again. It'll show you a little more up close now. Again, this isn't sped up.
Absolutely creepy, and we've gotten a few video clips of her moving. This is probably the most she's moved in a video that we've captured. And like I said, we tried figuring out how this could be done normally. It's impossible. It really is impossible, and it's kind of freaky to see an inanimate object come alive like that. It's almost a scene out of Toy Story in a way that shouldn't be happening in real life, but it did. So it's really, really, really weird, and that happens often here. So moving on. All right.
So help me. What if I think I have a haunted object, Cody?
So the first thing we always recommend if you think you have a haunted object or you have a haunted house is to keep a journal. Write down everything that's happening that's paranormal. Write down the date, the time it's happening, and what's happening. Over time of you doing this, we might be able to notice a pattern that you may not have recognized. We're going to check the weather patterns on the dates that you wrote down and the times. Maybe it was raining every time you experienced something, or maybe a certain person in your family was home every single time something happened. So definitely write down everything. The next thing we want to do is, if we figure out that it is an object, is you want to remove it from the living space.
Yes, we ask if you have a shed or a closet or anything away from your living space, please put this object there and kind of observe it from afar for a couple days or even a couple weeks if you'd like, and document everything you see happen. Maybe it's only when your family is around or only a certain time of day. This will better help us understand how to help you. So that's what we recommend next, and then to contact us.
Yeah, send us an email. That's our email now if you want to jot it down. If you don't want to remember it, just go to our website, paranormalcouple.com.
You can contact us on everything.
And you can send us an email there or on Facebook or anything like that. We also have our membership program, which is something fun that we like to do, and something a little extra for people who want a little extra when it comes to haunted objects. But that is our presentation, and I think we have some time for a few questions if there are any. But other than that, we would love to thank Robert and the Tewksbury Public Library and the Friends of the Library and everybody for really joining us tonight. And happy Halloween, most important.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Coming up quick.
So thank you so much, Cody and Satori. Wonderful presentation as expected. Let's take about 5 minutes of questions and then we'll get you guys out of here.
Sure.
Karen, yeah, great. Karen asks, what do you do to ensure that no negative attachments come with you when you procure an item?
We love them.
Absolutely.
No, we have many different things that we do.
We do. So, of course, everybody has a different background when it comes to religion and beliefs. And, it's different on every situation. We're great friends with a lot of people who have museums, and everybody does it differently. We're good friends with the Warren Museum, and they believe to wear gloves and pray, and we're friends with other museums where they don't do any of that. We believe that we need to really surround ourselves with good intentions and kind of put a wall, a spiritual wall around us. We believe that if we're very strong in our belief, that nothing bad will ever happen, and thankfully that has worked for us so
This
far.
also kind of matches with the question, like, what is your belief system, your religious belief when you look at this subject? And we say everything because we kind of believe that everything plays into a web of a true answer. Maybe we all just do it a little bit differently. So we like to incorporate everything to make everybody else feel comfortable also. We feel very confident in our beliefs, but when you enter the museum, you may see crystals and prayer cards and crosses and herbs and things like that. So we like to incorporate a little bit of everything.
And every case is different. I mean, if there is a serious case where there's something really is something bad, there's different binding rituals that can be done
Yes.
and things like
I
that.
also put my foot down though. I give them all the same spiel, negative or positive, when they come to this museum, and we give them ground rules, and it seems to really work.
Great question.
So Rachel would like to know, what is the paranormal object that scares you guys the most?
Scares you the most. So definitely Liza is definitely probably the number one in terms of activity and feelings.
It's not a scare. It's just so much to the point where we want to respect her because she's proven it so much. One time I said something while we'd taken her and gone to a presentation, and I said something. I was just like, oh, come on. And I grabbed her because we were running late. And on the way there, I guess she didn't like what I said. At least I believe so, because there were 3 car accidents right in front of us, making us an hour at least late to that presentation.
Yeah.
And our cars broke down.
She might not freak you out, but she freaks me out, that's for sure. Yeah,
it's just a lot of respect.
So yeah, Liza is definitely the top of the list. There are a few other besides her. There are a few other
cult
items that were used in darker practices, and I think just the situation revolving around them. I mean, we have some stuff from some pretty dark people. The situation and the people revolving around them makes the object, creepy.
So Cody and Satori, you sort of touched on this at the beginning of your presentation, but just for clarification, where is your museum? So I know you said it's more of a traveling exhibit at the moment, but can people visit this museum or not at this time?
Sure. So the museum is currently traveling for the next, I want to say 2 years, 2 or 3 years, and then it's going to have a set location here in New England. But right now, the public isn't, the home-based museum isn't open to the public, but we are doing a lot of in-person events. I think the next in-person event is in Maine in a few weeks.
Paranormalcouple.com on the events tab has all of our events where we're bringing in, we'll let you know how many objects if you contact us. We actually, Maine, we have Maine Parafest coming up too, where we're going to be bringing tents full of objects. So it really depends.
Karen asks, do you do any interviewing or questionnaires to rule out psychological issues with the client rather than an object being truly haunted?
Yes. So when I said that we had our psychologist friend kind of evaluate the man involved in Liza's case, she gave him a questionnaire and really talked to him for a little while, kind of trying to gather as much evidence that she could to see if he was mentally ill. Every time we do a case, though, we do like to contact them and kind of meet them before we even do the case and try to kind of question them that way too.
Right. Every case starts off with a phone call, and on that phone call, it usually lasts at least an hour, sometimes 2, and there's dozens of questions that we ask that cover some pretty touchy topics. And if people truly want help, you have to answer the questions. That includes, medications that you're taking and things like that. And thankfully, we have some great contacts with doctors, neurological surgeons, believe it or not, psychologists that we can refer to and get their opinions and suggestions.
Again, the last thing we want to do is take these objects anyway. So we want to make sure that they're in the right place of mind before we even think about that.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. I think we'll end it there for questions. I'm not sure if Cody and Satori are Red Sox fans, but I am. So we're on a strict time limit tonight here. I did want to give Cody and Satori a moment to give any last words. Maybe that's the wrong phrase to use when we're talking about paranormal programs. But anything you'd like to add to the presentation before we wrap up?
No, we're good. Just thank you again, Robert. And thanks everybody for coming. Happy Halloween.
Yeah. And if anybody has any questions, contact us on our social medias.
Absolutely.
Great. So definitely give Cody and Satori a follow on social media. And while I have most of you still on the line, next Thursday, 7 o'clock, we're hosting Peter Muse for his program called Witches and Warlocks of Massachusetts. Next Friday, October 15th, 7 o'clock, The Legends and Lore of the Bridgewater Triangle with Tim Weisberg. And next Saturday, October 16th at 10 o'clock in the morning, we have Haunted Lighthouses of New England with Jeremy DeTremont, and all that information is in the chat. So thank you again, Cody. Thank you so much, Satori, and I hope everyone enjoys their evening. Thanks again.
Good night.